All righty, if you got your Bibles tonight, turn over to Exodus chapter 19. And we'll read a little scripture there here in just a moment. When we left off last week, we saw how the Israelites were kind of running for their lives across the dry ground there, the Red Sea. And the Egyptians were kind of hot on their tail there. And you remember how Moses encouraged the folk there in Exodus 14 when he said, "Don't be afraid, stand firm, and you'll see the deliverance the Lord's going to bring you." He said, "Those Egyptians that you see today, you ain't ever going to see them again." And that's exactly what happened. Now, we pick up the story 3 months later. And so let's just read 3 verses there from Exodus chapter 19. Let's begin reading verse 6. Well, verse 4. We'll read through verse 6. "You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possessions. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." One of the recurring themes in the story, as we've seen over and over again, is how God relentlessly pursues you and I. He pursues mankind, and he wants to have a relationship with us, and that's what the story is all about. It began, as you know, with Adam and Eve in the garden. He wanted a relationship with them. It continued with Noah and his family, and then it continued with Abraham and Sarah, and his desire with Abraham and Sarah was that he would build a nation, and that nation could be in relationship with him, and that nation, of course, is the nation of Israel. Now, chapter 5 in the story is a transitional point, a big transitional point in the story. It's also a transitional point in Scripture as well, because God is not going to interact as much one-on-one with people as he did in the past. He's not going to have his plan presented through one person or just a few people. He wants to have a relationship with all his people, and that's where the nation of Israel comes into play. But before that happened, he said there's some things that need to be worked out. And that's where we are at in the story. And there's 3 different things, he said, in the story that need to be worked on. Number 1 is, he said, you need a set of standards. God kept his promise every time, as we saw through these 5 weeks so far. He kept his promise to Adam and Eve. He kept his promise to Noah. He kept his promise to Abraham, to Sarah. But in Genesis 15, he says this, "Know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a country not of their own. And they'll be enslaved and mistreated for 400 years. But I'll punish that nation they serve as slaves. And afterwards they'll come out with great possession." And that's exactly what happened. God kept his promises. Now, as he builds this nation in Egypt, the population explodes. There's somewhere probably around 3 million people now, give or take a few. But they are now free from the bondage of Egypt, and they're gathered here at the base of Mount Sinai. So they're ready to become a great nation, and God has some big plans for them, salvation for the world. But he's saying if this is going to work, then we're going to have a set of standards, some guidelines for how the people interact with me and how they interact with each other. And we know those guidelines as what? 10 Commandments. In God's community, in this new nation called Israel, things are going to be different than they were for the rest of the world. Shouldn't have been, but they were going to be different. People were going to love, and they were going to honor, and they were going to worship God. And they were going to treat each other in their relationships with dignity, with love, and with respect. And that's what the Ten Commandments is all about. Now, we know those standards. We know these guidelines. They're found in Exodus chapter 20. And you know them all. And sometimes I go over in the fellowship hall, and there's a plaque on the wall over there. And if the tables are set up, it's a good place to walk. I can turn the air conditioning down to about 55. And I can walk as fast as I want to walk around those tables. It's just around in a circle. It's not a big circle or anything like that. But there's a plaque back there that has the Ten Commandments. And I'll tell you what's the truth. Even though I've heard them all my life, I memorized them, and when I went to college, I had to know them and verbatim and all this and that. I can read them every time I go around, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to say the first one, close my eyes, and I'll go around this time. And by the time I get to the fifth or sixth one, I've already forgot. It's just something about my mind that just doesn't let me keep them in memory for some reason. But whether or not you know them verbatim or not, you know them because you've heard them all your life. If you didn't hear them from somebody teaching them in Sunday school, you heard them from mom and dad. And sometimes you heard them with a belt. Sometimes you heard them with some other form of punishment. But you know about the Ten Commandments. Most of the time when you heard them from mom and dad, it was because you were breaking one of the last six. But let's go over them. The first four teach us how that we should value our relationship with God. And then the last six teach us how that we are to value our relationship with each other. Number one, there in Exodus chapter 20, verse 3 says what? No other gods. No other gods. Now, they had just come out of bondage. 400 years in Egypt. Long time. And during those 400 years, they have been introduced to every other god imaginable, or so-called God. I mean, there were tons of false gods in Egypt. They had a god for everything. They had a god for the water. They had a god for the sun, the moon, the stars, for babies, for everything. I mean, they had gods for everything. So and God says, well, you can't have any others. I mean, that's directly to the point. Isaiah 46:9 says, I am God, there is none other. I am God, and there is none like me. Pretty plain, right to the point. In other words, the holiness of God was to be impressed upon the people. It was, I am God. You shall have no other God. Now, we'll talk about this as time goes on throughout the story, but every one of us got a few, don't we? I mean, you ever had a God keep you out of church? No, I know you haven't. I've not. You ever had a lawnmower keep you out of church? An appointment at the bank keep you out of church? A doctor's appointment that you purposely made on Wednesday night so that you didn't have to come? I'm just kidding. But they were to show reverence for God. You shall have no other God that stands between you and me. That's what he says. You know, when they were at this foot of the mountain, God said, listen, guys, don't get close to the mountain. Don't touch it because I'm holy. Don't touch it. And they were to wash their clothes, wash their selves. They were to show an amazing amount of reverence to God. And it was preparing them for the reception of God's law. There was thunder and lightning that's going on. We've had all kinds of storms. But I don't think it ever rained on Sinai. It just there was thunder and lightning going on. Just the power of God. There was this big thick cloud over the mountain, thunder and lightning coming out of it. And God was saying, this is who I am. All this was done to impress these folk by God. him saying, I'm holy. Treat me like I'm holy. Don't have any other gods that are holy. You know, we treat God very casually today. I treat God very casually today. He is my friend, but he ain't my buddy. I mean, I don't call him up and say, hey, bud, come on over, or anything like that. He's my friend. He's always with me. But doesn't he deserve our deepest reverence and respect? He does, doesn't he? I mean, he alone is to be God, and he alone is to be worshiped as God. And he was trying to get the people to get it. I've got some lightning going on up here in this one cloud that's hanging over the mountain. Don't touch this mountain. It's holy because God's on it right now. You know, wash yourself because the law's about to come down from the mountain. He wanted them to know, and he wants you and I to know that he is God and that he is holy. The second one, there in verses 4 through 6 says, don't make any graven images, don't make any idols. And they just came from a place, again, that was full of idols. As I said, every one of those gods that were in Egypt had some kind of form. Some of them was frogs, some of them was all kinds of different things. There was, you seen that face of that woman who's got the little pointed things out of her, well, I don't know. They're like little pictures or dishes, and there's a smiley faced woman, and it's got pulled. Never mind. You're like me; you don't pay attention. But anyway, he said, "Don't have any idols." I mean, think about it, guys. We try to capture the greatness of God and big cathedrals and great, you know, I kid the guys, you know, we've thought about building here the last few years, and I told them that it would be really nice to have a glass ceiling to where you could look up to the heavens. And somebody said, well, it's Hampton, they'll shoot it. So can't have glass ceilings in Hampton. But you know, it's impossible to capture the greatness of God in an idol. You can't have any other. I mean, God is not ordinary, and nothing in this world you can make or form or fashion that would capture his greatness, capture his glory, his holiness. And these guys, they just came from Egypt where idolatry was rampant. There was, as I said, a figure for every god. There was a God for everything, and there was a figure for that God. And those plagues that we looked at last week, every one of them was a direct assault on some of those gods and wannabe gods or false gods, or whatever you want to call them. So he says, don't make an idol to worship. Now, the church has kind of borderline did this for, I guess, almost from its inception. But be careful, be careful. Don't have any idols to worship. Don't misuse the name of the Lord. Don't take the name of the Lord thy God in what? In vain. The word really means profane. Use it in a common or irreverent manner that we're kind of prone to do. If you turn on TV, you watch a football player. I watched football coaches' lips, and you don't have any. I mean, there's no doubt in your mind what they are saying. A player messes up out there, and the first word out of their mouth is God, and then the second and third and fourth one is the attachments. And kind of what he's saying. You could do it a lot of other ways. I mean, how many promises have you made to God and you just said, God forgot about that? No, he didn't. You know, all this vulgar speech that goes on in our world today, like, oh my God, it's irreverent. And we as Christians, I think, can do better. But God's a jealous God. And we are to jealously honor and reverence Him by keeping His name. Then the Sabbath day, keep it holy, there in verses 8 through 11. The Sabbath is actually Saturday then. The early church, the word Sabbath, by the way, just means rest. It's a principle that God instituted. Most people in the United States of America don't have any problem with this word rest. We rest, amen. We rest not just one day, we rest a whole bunch of days. But anyway, God's principle was that 1 out of every 7 days that you would rest. You should rest and you should worship. And so the Sabbath. Now the resurrection and of Jesus Christ on the first day of the week, and then the early church's example, we no longer worship on the Sabbath. We worship and we rest on the first day of the week instead of the last day of the week. But the principle of the Sabbath is still in effect. So remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Now the next 6 deal with you and me together. The very first one is one that I failed horribly. And that is to honor your father and your mother. Now God has forgiven me, but it is the first commandment with promise. I have thought so many times of how bad a kid that I was and how little that I honored my mom and my dad. I praised the Lord before my father died, right before he died. I became a Christian, but I didn't go up to him and say, Dad, I'm sorry. I wish I had. Right after that, he had leukemia, and then he went to Duke, and that was in the day when chemotherapy wasn't a pleasant thing, and it wasn't very long that he died. But I just didn't do this to respect my mother and father. I did get to do a little caring for my father, and I did get to do a little caring for my mother. But this commandment is the first commandment that has a promise attached to it. And the promise is you can add years to your life if you keep it, and you can add tears to your life. Regret if you don't. All righty. The second one, don't commit murder. Well, it's actually the sixth one, the second one that deals with eyes, there in verse 13. Now, again, this isn't a thing against serving in the military or protecting your family or anything like that. That's not what this is a prohibition against. But it is a prohibition against sitting home and making a map and saying, okay, I know this guy goes right here every day at this time to get him a cup of coffee, and when he goes in that door today, I'm going to blow his brains out. That's what the prohibition is against. Thou shalt not kill. Not commit adultery. Man, this is God's standard. I don't know what happened to it in America. Do you? I mean, it's just, we just wiped this one out completely and rewritten this particular commandment. I don't know that we really know what adultery is in America. That's in verse 14 of Exodus 20. But God's design for sexual expression between a man and a woman is within the bonds of marriage. Nowhere else. And between a man and a woman. Any other sexual expression violates the will of God, and it is sin, just plain and simple. And, this is God's will. Now listen, I've told you 1,000 times. I mean, we don't hear much about AIDS, but AIDS is still around. And all the other sexually transmitted diseases that are in our world today. We don't hear that much about it. We're just used to it. And we've got pills that'll delay death or kind of put it in remission and all this stuff now. But one generation of obeying just this commandment, be gone. It'd be over with. There'd be no more sexual disease. I mean, it'd be gone. And I mean, there is so much that we could say about it, but we got to go on. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You know, if it ain't yours, don't get it. Amen? How else to say it? I mean, if God didn't give it to you, then He didn't want you to have it, so don't go get it from somebody else. That's just the way it is. There's a lot of ways you can steal. And you know all those ways. You can steal by not giving what God is His, our money, our time, our gifts. I mean, we can steal in a lot of different ways, but thou shalt not steal. Not give false testimony about your neighbor. We don't do that in America, do we? Heaven's sakes alive. I'm going to be mean. Anybody ain't got Facebook? I don't have it. Well, there's several of them. You guys don't have it. I'm going to be mean. I believe that was created so that we could give false testimony about our neighbors. I really believe that. I mean, there is no way that the people who say those things on there, I've got daughters who have turned me on Facebook, and they've showed me things that people have said about different people. And, you know, even if you think that, why say that? I mean, my goodness. It does no good. I mean, don't lie about your neighbor. That includes gossip. It ain't gossip if it's the truth. Yes, it is. It sure is. You know, I hear that all the time. It ain't gossiping if you're telling the truth. Yes, it is. If you went and asked them, is this the truth? It's gossip. Slander. And listen, by the time I could tell Jim up here on the first row something about Tommy on the first row on the other side, and we went this way and come back up, it wouldn't be the same. When it got back to Tommy, it'd be horrible. It'd be that he went and killed somebody or something. And it's just the way it goes. I mean, you stretch the truth, you hide the truth, you exaggerate the truth. Don't give false testimony about your neighbor. Listen, if you tell the truth, the older you get, the more this comes into play. But if you tell the truth, you don't need a good memory. You don't. And the older you get, the better you are at telling the truth, I think. Because you can't remember the lie that you told. So, it's true. What did Jesus say? What did He say He was? He said, I am the way, the what? The truth. He did. You know, if we're going to be His children, we ought to tell the truth. Especially when we're talking about each other, really. You shall not covet. Now, this commandment is kind of it's forbidding a state of mind kind of thing. We live in a world where there are the haves and the have-nots. It's always been, I guess. I don't know. But this forbids wanting what the haves have. I mean, you could, there are people in our world, there are always going to be people in our world who are going to be more powerful than you and I. There's always going to be, and why would you covet that power? First of all, I mean, they're going to be richer than you and I. Why would you covet that? I mean, our actions grow out of our thoughts, don't you? I never stole anything. I never stole anything that I didn't first think about that I wanted it. You know, I really did. You know, I was a horrible thief. I've told you that 1,000 times. Every time I stole something, I got caught. But I really came to know after I met Jesus Christ that it wasn't that I was a bad thief. I had a God who loved me. So He made sure that I was the one who got caught, so that I didn't continue doing that. On and on. But the truth of the matter is that you don't steal it until you think about, I want that. I covet that. And listen, I'm not going to get into it, but if you covet, it'll lead you to steal. It'll lead you to lie. Adultery is because you look at somebody you covet. It is all those things. So the Lord said, if you're going to be a nation that I'm going to bless and bless all the people of the world through, there's got to be some standards. And here they are. And those are the big 10, the 10 Commandments. And 3 different times after the Lord said that, in Exodus 19, verse 8, in Exodus 24, verse 3, and in Exodus 24, verse 7, the Lord said, the people said, whatever you say, Lord, we'll do it. If you tell us that we won't have any more gods, that's what we'll do. If you tell us not to make an idol, that's what we'll do. We'll do everything the Lord has said. 3 different times they said that. Well, we all know that lasted not very long. Moses didn't even make it off the mountain with the tablets in his hands until they were down at the foot of the mountain doing what? Making an idol. Making another God. It's just amazing. Somebody asked, why in the world did God give us 10 commandments if He knew we couldn't keep them? Anybody in here ever kept all 10 of them perfectly? Jesus said that Jesus expanded upon them, didn't He? And He said, adultery ain't just the act, it's the desire. Murder's not just killing somebody, it is hating somebody. Jesus, so we may not have any cold-blooded murderers in here, but we got a room full of cold-blooded murderers in here. We may not have anybody who's ever committed adultery, but we've got a whole room full of adulterers in here, probably. It's the truth. Why did God give us the 10 Commandments if He knew we couldn't keep them? The Israelites had already broken a couple, first 2, by the time they got there. And so Moses had to go up and get a new set after they got broke. The truth of the matter is, God didn't give us the commandments to show us what sin is. You and I know pretty much what sin is. God gave us the commandments to show us what sinners we are. And He gave us the commandments to show us that we need a Savior. And that is, of course, Jesus Christ. James 2 says, for whoever keeps the whole law and yet stumbles at just one point, he's guilty of what? Breaking it all. I'm not a good lawnmower man, and I'm even worse lawnmower. Okay? And I remember moving into the house down there in Siam, I don't know, 3 weeks maybe. And we didn't move into the thing till fall, and I thought I'd planned it, if I wouldn't have to mow any that year, so I sowed the grass. But it was an unusually warm fall, and so the grass grew faster than I thought, so I had to mow it. Well, I hadn't figured out how to mow it just yet. And so I was coming up by the side of the house, and there was a rock. And the rock went out the mower, and it hit the window that was 3 months old and put a hole in the window. But it didn't hurt none of the rest of that winter. Not a bit. Just one hole. And I thought, I can put tape over that, It's just one hole. But my wife didn't see it that way. She figured one hole in the window was the whole window, right? And it all needs to be fixed. That's the 10 Commandments. You know, our response should be what their response was. We should be just like they. Lord, we'll do everything that you have said. But remember, the only way that you can even come close to achieving that is with the help of God. Now, how do we get it today as God's people? How do we get the help from heaven that we need? Okay, prayer is one way, yeah, but what is that special gift that is given to us at salvation? That the Holy Spirit, yes. I mean, He leads us into all truth. He doesn't lead us into these places where we are. Well, you know the drill. And that's the only way that we ever come close to pleasing God and making true on the promise that we say when we say we'll do everything that you have told us to do, God. So these are the guidelines that God established. Now we got to hurry. I'm late, long-winded. He said a simple set of guidelines, then a simple sanctuary. Verse 8 of Exodus 25. Let's read that. I believe I'm right. Then have them make a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them. Make this tabernacle and all its furnishings exactly like the pattern that I'm going to show you. You know, the truth of the matter is that there's no place in heaven and no place on the earth, no place below the earth, no place above the earth that could ever just contain God. And this tabernacle, of course, could not contain God. But God wanted there to be a place where the people that He chose, this nation called Israel, that He was going to bless the world through because from here would come Jesus Christ. He wanted them to have a place that they could come to and worship Him. And it was going to be a place that was going to be different than any other place. It was going to be a place that represented Him. It was going to be a place that He designs, the dimensions of the place, and we're going to look at that Sunday night. He's going to give them specific directions on how to build it, what the materials would be, and all those things. It was to be portable so they could move it. It wasn't stationary. It was a temporary tent where they could meet with God. Now later on, God will give the designs and the dimensions and all the directions on how to build a permanent place called the temple there in Jerusalem. But both the tabernacle and the temple, even though God was in their midst, and they had saw the power of God over and over again. They saw it with the plagues. They saw it. They certainly saw it that day on the mountain. They saw it when they crossed the Red Sea. They saw it with the pillar of the cloud and the pillar of fire. They saw God's presence all the time and His glory. But He wanted this place, and where they could come and worship Him. But there was a place inside of this place called the Holy of Holies that they couldn't come. Now it's interesting to think about. It was a place that had the ark and the mercy seat, and the priests would go in there once a year and they'd offer sacrifice for themselves and for the people, and the blood on the mercy seat and things. But only they could go. And only they could go once a year. People couldn't go. There was this big curtain that separated the outer court, the tabernacle anyway, from the Holy of Holies. But when Jesus came and when He died, you and I know what happened to the veil, that big curtain. It was torn in two and it was ripped from top to bottom. And Hebrews 4:16 says that we can now approach the throne of God. And Hebrews says that we should, the writer of Hebrews said, that we should approach the throne of grace with confidence or boldly, so we can find grace to help in time of need. So they had a set of standards, and they had this sanctuary to worship in, but they needed one more thing, and that was a strategy for sin. Before God could dwell with his children, there had to be something that bridged the gap between man and God. He is holy, he is righteous. He cannot be in the presence of sin, you know. And you and I are not. We're selfish and unholy and ungodly. All that gap had to be overcome. And the sin had to be dealt with, so God proposed a way. And that way, of course, was through the sacrificial system. To atone for their sins, God set in motion this sacrificial system of the animal sacrifices. And it had already started because in the Garden of Eden, when man sinned and Adam and Eve, they had recognized their nakedness. What did God do? He killed an animal, and he covered their nakedness with that skin. But we see it in Egypt when they left Egypt. The unblemished lambs were killed, and the blood of those lambs were put on the doorpost and caused this death angel to pass over the Israelites. Now, the book of Leviticus, many people consider it the most boring of all the books of the Bible. And from a lower story perspective, I mean, it's not exciting reading. It's not a page turner, okay? You just can't wait to get to the next page kind of book. But it's one of the most important books in the Bible because it lays out what has to happen before the gap between man and God can be bridged, before man can be reconciled to God. And you and I know that this is a preview of one day God's Son coming and forever bridging that gap and forever making it possible for us to have fellowship, perfect fellowship with God. Listen, God wants to have fellowship with you and I, doesn't he? He does. But these three things have to happen. There has to be some standards. We've got a bunch. Amen? This book. This is God's mind to us. It's his blueprint for life, for living as his children. It's his standards. There has to be a sanctuary. Well, it ain't this. The Bible says, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 6, that your body is what? The temple of God. Yes. And guess what? If you're his child, he's dwelling with you. He's dwelling in that temple right now. And then there has to be a strategy for sin. And that, of course, is Jesus Christ. You can sum up this passage with just that beautiful verse of John 3:16. For God so loved the world, right? He gave his only begotten Son. We get into some. This is a transitional point here in the story, and we'll get into some things that kind of go a little bit of a new direction next week through the story. Again, that book that you have is not a substitute for the Bible. It's a supplement to the Bible, but it's not a substitute. So whatever it is that you are reading in the story, wherever we're at, we'll be in week 6 or session 6 in the story next week. Grab this book and sync the two.